Good morning, monsters, and welcome to this special Labor Day edition. I hope that you guys are all out there doing whatever it is that you enjoy. Myself, I'm probably out in the woods right now, even though this show is live. Today's episode is pre-recorded, so just keep that in mind going through the rest of today's episode. We're live for you, but pre-recorded for me right here. So, as I said, I'm probably out in the woods chasing something furry. I don't know what, but hopefully that's where I'm at. So let's get right into this. All right. So I want to remind everyone to go out and check out The Trail of Undiscovered Beasts. Season 1 is streaming now on Paraflix. It is all about Bigfoot experiences in Wisconsin. Season 1 is out now, and Season 2 will premiere in the fall. Season 2 will be all over the U.S., locations that we've investigated. So this is exclusive to Paraflix Paranormal Plus. It's an all-online streaming platform similar to Netflix, but it's all paranormal and cryptids and fun stuff like that, that if you're watching this show, you're going to like it. You can get 10% off your first 3 months with promo code CAPS10. If you want to show your support for everything we do at Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, head on over to wisconsincaps.com. There you can find our logos and everything on almost anything that you can put a sticker or t-shirt or pillow or pin on, and you can share your love for us on everything that you wear and do. While you're online, head on over to all of our social media platforms. You can find us on Wisconsin Caps at Patreon, Facebook, X, whatever Twitter is calling itself now, TikTok, YouTube, and WI Caps on Instagram. If you want to see us in person, we are going to be at the MI Paracon. Actually, that is over with. This is pre-taped, so that was a couple weeks ago. You can find us September 22nd through the 24th in Glenbeulah, Wisconsin at the Great Lakes Paranormal Conference. I am going to be giving a cryptozoology presentation at the Kenosha, Wisconsin Public Library October 6th. And you can find us October 14th at the Milwaukee Paranormal Conference in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And then when we head down to Lexington, Kentucky, November 18th and 19th for CryptidCon. All right, guys, that's it for that. If you guys want to show your support for everything that we do here at the Untold Radio Network, here's how.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
It always... I try and be proactive and roll right from that video into the next video, and it ends up cutting itself off. I don't know why, but that is a technical issue, and that's what this show is all about. So there you go. All right, guys. My guest today, as I remind you, is pre-recorded, and my guest is Kathy Strain. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm cracking myself up about the disclaimer that anything I say is just my problem, so that's always good to know.
And it's funny because the one guest that I needed to play that for was the one that I forgot to play it for. So I thought that was very interesting. I'm like, oh, here we go. This is a fun roller coaster we're going down. And yeah, so but welcome to the show, Kathy. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So why don't you tell a little bit about yourself and how you got into cryptids and Bigfoot and stuff for anybody that's not familiar with you?
Oh, sure. I am the forest archaeologist and tribal relations program manager for the Stanislaus National Forest. which is in California. We're right adjacent to Yosemite National Park, if anybody knows where that is. So we're up in the foothills, beautiful country. I have a bachelor's and master's degree in anthropology. I've been in the Forest Service for, I don't know, 35 years, and been here at the Stanislaus 25 years. And so I'm a lot older than I look, I guess. But I came into Bigfooting really young. I saw Legend of Boggy Creek when I was a little girl. Had a huge influence on me. And in around fifth grade or so, I asked my teacher what I needed to do to study Bigfoot for a living. And she said, well, you probably have to go into anthropology. And I said, okay. So that was always my pathway. I dabbled a little bit in geology, but that didn't last very long because there was math, and I don't do math. So, and I figured it out that nobody was going to pay me to study Bigfoot. And so, but by that time, we always spent our time traveling. When I was, growing up, when we went to national parks and national forests and national monuments and stuff, we rarely ever went to fun things like Disneyland or any of that stuff. My parents were really into the outdoors. And so it was, anthropology, Forest Service was all a natural fit. And then because you're outside all the time, as an anthropologist, archaeologist, what I'm doing is looking for artifacts and sites, but you can look for footprints at the same time. And I remember it's happened to me a couple of times when I've been out doing a survey and come across Bigfoot footprints before. And so it's just been kind of like, I don't know if if I hit him with a government car, do I get in trouble? What does it make it the government's if that happens? So, but I've never seen a Bigfoot while on duty with the Forest Service. So
very interesting. Now, I like I said before we got on the air here, I have heard like some interviews with you on Cliff and Bobo's show and stuff like that. You have had Bigfoot encounters, though, correct?
Yes, I have. I have 3 sightings in Oklahoma in the area known as Area X with the NAWAC in 2012, 2013, 2014. And I've had lots of experience here in Tuolumne County where I live as well, but no sightings, just a variety of everything else, of howls and footprints, a nest, lots of different types of things. But definitely the most exciting stuff is, of course, the sightings, because that's, what it is that you're seeing. And versus sometimes when you see footprints, if you don't know what you're doing, how do you know it's just not a double tap bear prints, So yeah, the sightings are definitely the pinnacle of my experiences.
Very cool. As I was saying to you again before we got on the show here, I'm well aware of the North American Wood Ape Conservancy and your work there and stuff, but I wasn't aware of all of your tribal and Native American research with these creatures. Can you tell us a little bit? You have a book about all of it. Can you tell me about your book and what's all in there?
Well, because of my interest, in Bigfoot and the correlation of being an archaeologist and tribal relations, it just was a natural evolution, I guess. It started when I was on the Sequoia National Forest, and I was the district archaeologist for the Tule district, I guess. And I would help the tribes with some of the projects they were doing, but we were also doing an excavation. And I knew about the hairy man pictographs or painted rock before. I had been to them before, but I didn't know that there were stories behind why those paintings were there. And I was going over to the Tule River Indian reservations and talking with the elders about this excavation that I was doing. And, basically, what do you guys want me to do if I find human remains? And what do you want me to do if this happens and stuff? And I don't even remember how we got on this subject, but they started talking about Bigfoot. And I said, oh, I love Bigfoot, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long story short, towards the end of this long process of doing tribal consultation, they said, we really like you. They really had a thing for my young son. Was a flaming redhead, and I couldn't come talk to them unless I brought him. And so they would just pass him around. They just thought he was, the cutest thing they ever saw. And he's an archaeologist now too, by the way, and also into Bigfoot. So they just said, we want to tell you these stories, and it's okay, if you want to write it down. And we had to go through some iterations of it because they got into some disagreements over, well, no, you have this wrong and you have this wrong. But in the end, I was given these stories, and I kept them to myself for a very long period of time because I really felt like they were very important to the tribe, and I didn't want to just do whatever with them. And in 2003, I decided. I remember John Green. They were putting together the International Bigfoot Symposium in Willow Creek back in I think 2003, and they were looking for people to talk there. And of course, I had joined the BFRO. I knew who Meldrum and Krantz, and Krantz had, I guess, just already passed away by 2003. But I said, well, it's time for me to kind of show myself, that I've been talking to tribes for a very long time, and I have this information. And so I gave a presentation there, which was wonderful because it's, Bob Gimlin, and first time I met Bobo, and first time I met a whole bunch of people, and that's where I met my husband, was at that conference. And so it was just the start of something that bloomed. So then, like I said, I'd already been gathering stories and talking to tribes. And so I approached my publisher, which is Hancock House. And I said, would you guys be interested in something like this? And they said, well, that's mostly California, Pacific Northwest stories. You got more? And I said, well, I don't know. And about that same time, Craig Woolheater, who was at the time, I'll see if I can remember what their old group was called. It was who the NAWAC evolved from the previous group. But Craig Woolheater was, and I met him at the 2003 symposium. He approached me about giving a talk at the, just left out of my head. Oh no, San Antonio, University of Texas in San Antonio, for a big conference they were doing down there, and a big museum display. And I said, okay, I'd be nice to go down there. Bob's family lives in Texas, and so it's always a good time to see family and have a little bit of a vacation. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm going to Texas. I should do right by the tribes down there. Let me see what the Caddo and the other tribes say about Bigfoot. And wow, when I dived in, I was like, I clearly have had a Pacific Northwest blinder on, going, they can't possibly exist outside of California and Oregon and Washington and Vancouver. It's just blinders. We tend to do that. And so I got tons of stories. That's what I gave my presentation on. And then I thought, I need to look at the rest of the United States. I need to look at Wisconsin, Michigan, New York, all those other states. And that's how the book came to be, was once I started diving into tribes and their traditional beliefs in other locations, the stuff I gathered became the book. And that's pretty much how it happened, and pretty much how I kind of started being more open that Bigfoot is not a Pacific Northwest phenomena. He exists all through the United States. And then since then, I then said to myself, Kathy, if this is a real species in the United States, well, clearly he's been here as long as humans have been here, crossed over probably at the same time from the Bering Land Bridge. There's no reason to think that there isn't Bigfoot down in South America. So I started looking into that, and I have given a couple presentations on those stories, but I was thinking about that being my next book, but I just haven't had the time to put anything together. But essentially the stories are very, 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 very similar to what you find in North America. The names are very similar. They have similar cultural practices, such as dances. They don't have any totem poles, but that's a pretty, unique artwork that happens basically just in one part of the United States. But they've got baskets, they've got all kinds of different things, just like what you find in the United States. And so um, I would say that the language barrier is a little harder to get through because I barely speak English, let alone Spanish. But when I get the opportunity, that is going to be my next project, is to take that material and put it into a book so that all of these continents are represented.
That's fascinating. I love it. So if you're okay with this, let's dive in more into this, because I think this is really, really interesting and stuff. I guess my first question would be is, when you're looking at all these different stories across the United States and even down into South America and Central America and stuff, what are you noticing that is the most similar? Like what do all these stories have in common, and what conclusions can you draw from that?
I think, well, one thing that I think is very interesting is, in the United States, most tribes consider Bigfoot to be a brother of some sort. So they acknowledge that he's not us, but he's similar to us. Versus in South America, he's very much just an animal that lives in the woods, and they don't kind of have that attachment to him. But other than that, he steals women. That's a very common story throughout the United States, Central America, South America. So you have to always be on your guard, because it always makes me feel like there's not many of them, and so humans or females are the logical mate to have. And so those are very similar. Of course, hair covered, tall, walks on two legs, bangs on trees, yells, whistles. They all are common throughout the United States and Central and South America. Is never go outside if you hear one whistle, because that's how they steal you, is they lure you outside in the dark. And we don't see so good in the dark. I believe Bigfoot see pretty well in the dark, and so that's kind of how you get stolen, is that you're doing something stupid by being alone in the dark and not know that he's there. And so that the probably one of the best stories was from the 1600s, where a Spanish priest had written down, talking about what the locals said about this animal. And it's a Sacharuni is the traditional name for it. It's wild man of the forest, wild man of the jungle kind of thing, just like we have wild man of the forest and stuff up here as well. And the priest had noted that when they were talking about this animal, they would talk about his feet. And you know how Meldrum always talks about the mid-tarsal break. The priest was describing that what was unique about this animal is that its feet were just like its hands, that it could move its feet like a hand. And so that, to me, I always thought that was just, well, it's probably talking about the mid-tarsal break, that they thought that was weird about this animal. And so I don't know that anybody else thought it was as interesting as me, but a story from the 1600s, I think, for me, is fascinating. But yeah, it's just, it's clearly the same animal. I don't think they're quite as big as what we get in North America. But then again, I don't know that all, even in North America, they're all the same size. The description, like the skunk ape, I don't think it can, as you do get the same stories of being 7 or 8 feet tall. I think they're generally 6.5 type. And that's just what you would expect of a diverse animal population. You grow as big as your environment allows you to. What food resources are available, how much water, how long do you go in between having the ability to eat. And so that's what I would expect to see. If everywhere across every single place where a Bigfoot could be, they're always all 8 foot tall, that would be a problem. So natural diversity is what you would see in a healthy animal population.
As well as probably like adaptations and stuff too. I mean, if a certain species is grown to that climate, they're all going to evolve to a certain size to adapt to that. And if you're inbreeding with the amount of creatures that are in that area, you're also going to, highlight certain adaptations within height or hair color and stuff as well. So definitely makes sense.
And it's been, we think humans have been here. We're going to be wrong, but the oldest sites that we get, we think it's roughly 10,000, but we keep finding stuff that go, oops, I think it's a little older than that. And we, of course, as anthropologists, you want to talk about being stuck in a paradigm, but they walked across the land bridge. We don't really consider boating. How do we know they didn't boat and they weren't down here a lot longer, 17,000 years ago? But we know Bigfoots can't boat, so we know Bigfoot had to walk over the Bering Land Bridge from China at some point. We don't know when, but since the stories seem very embedded, it's likely that it was about the same time period massive waves of humans came across as well, because he's following food too. I don't know if he ate megafauna, but he's eating something, and you don't know that you're leaving China and you're going to the Americas. You don't know that. You're just following the resources as they're plentiful, and then you're not finding any other people that can fight you over the food, so you just keep going, and so we think that's the same thing as how Bigfoot came across. And I haven't dived into traditional Chinese stories of where they like pigeons, where there are Bigfoots everywhere, and so they were like, no, you leave, go across that Bering Land Bridge because there's so many of you. I don't know. We don't know. We'll probably never be able to know that until we capture one and get a DNA and get it all figured out of origins and how many do you need to have a stable population. There's a lot of unanswered questions that it's going to take a very long time to find the answers to.
Absolutely. When you're looking into the cultural and stuff of these stories and that, do they tell that they have their own language? Are they able to communicate with these creatures, or?
Well, for North America, of course, a good story, you have to have some amount of that of talking, or else it doesn't really help the story. But condor talks, eagle talks, all the coyote is a notorious talker. Usually he's one of those, he's a friend to some, almost a god to some, and an enemy to many more. And so for it's hard to sort out. Does that mean you think it can talk and have its own language, or is this just part of the story to tell the story, what you're trying to get across? And so I think that they think, I've had an elder one time tell me that another elder told me what the elder said, because the elder had already passed away. And he said that it was a tribe reviving some of their dances. And so they were drumming and they were doing, trying to get it back started what the dance was. And this elder saw the Bigfoot watching what was going on. So he went over and he said he talked to him and said, why are you here? And the Bigfoot told him, I haven't heard this music. I haven't heard this sound in a very long time, and I miss it. And I just want to sit here and listen to this. He didn't say drum, but this beat, because I miss it. I haven't heard it. And so the elder said, he told him, all right, that's fine. You can stay and watch and listen, but don't get any further than where you are. You're not allowed to come any closer, because this is the one day my computer decides to yell at me 3 times. Basically, don't come any closer, because I don't trust you around these children. And if any of our children show up missing after this, I'm coming after you. And so the elder let him stay, and he sat there and listened to the music and closed his eyes and kind of nodded to the beat. And then when they were done dancing, he got up and left. And so in that case, there was a language communication. But I've had another elder tell me that it was communication based on behavior. So he had went deer hunting, and he had a smaller deer, and it was over his shoulder, and he was walking back to the reservation, and it was near dusk, and he kind of had his head down because he was tired. It was a long walk, and this trail actually exists, and so it's one of those trails that comes off the reservation and goes onto National Forest, and it's a very, very old trail. And he was nearly home, and all of a sudden a Bigfoot was in his path. And he was like, oh, and so this is a Miwok story. So the Miwok, you never look a Bigfoot in the eye. You keep your head down so that you don't make eye contact, because that's very disrespectful to the Bigfoot directly. And that's a good way to die. So essentially he put his head down, and then he goes, well, I'll just walk around him. So he stepped to the side just to get out of the Bigfoot's way. And the Bigfoot blocked his path. He stepped as well over and blocked his path. And he goes, well, I don't know what I'm doing here. And he goes, okay, so now I'm going to go the other direction. And so he started to step over to go around the other direction. And the Bigfoot blocked his way again. And he could feel him breathing. He could, he said he could feel just his chest going in and out. And he was getting hot air on top of his head. And he said it was could tell he was not going to get out of there with that deer. And so he was like, well, all right. So he took the deer off his shoulder and put it on the ground, and Bigfoot moved out of his way and let him continue on. And so then he went home, and he went and told his father what had happened. And his father said, oh, I'm really sorry. I forgot to tell you that we owe the Bigfoot that lives in this area a deer every year. So you just paid our debt. So thanks for that. And he was all like, what? Nobody ever told me that before. And so anyway, he's telling me the story. He had to be in his, I don't know, say late 60s, early 70s. And he had later on then had another Bigfoot encounter. Anyway, he was telling me this, and he goes, so now I always make sure I tell everybody, if you're going to walk on this path and you have a deer, don't expect to come home with it, because we owe this Bigfoot one a year. And so I just always enjoy that story. But it was communication through action. So the Bigfoot didn't say to him, put that deer down. He was just like, I'm going to make it obvious to you that you're going to put that deer down. And so different. I think there's, I don't know that any other animal you'd be able to tell, outside the raging bear, I guess, get out of here. It's pretty clear. But I mean, to be able to behave in a manner to convey a point or, what you want done, I think would be unique to a Bigfoot, that the only other intelligent animal would be humans that could do that. So it was, to me, it's very fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. When you're talking about Bigfoot, like disregard like personal feelings and stuff like that, but some people have had these orb encounters and other like paranormal encounters with these creatures, and I find it interesting. Do you have any stories of the natives and stuff where do they have an explanation for these lights and orbs in the woods, and is that associated for them with Bigfoot, or is it its own phenomenon?
I have never heard of a Native American ever talking or mentioning orbs under any circumstance. And I've been plenty of different places with plenty of different tribal people where that is not something that's ever come up. And so I think that's a phenomena unto itself. I'm not a believer in that. I think that, there's no reason to think that. I do remember one time I was in the field with Cliff. Who else was there? Monica Rollins, Brian Brown. We were up at Skookum Meadow, and they couldn't understand. It was Brian Brown couldn't understand what he thought were orbs in this location. And so I went there. We said, okay, let's go back at nighttime and let's see what it is that you're seeing. And it turned out to be fireflies. He just, because of where he was from, he didn't ever see one. And that's, so I think there's always the logical explanations. Not everybody can know everything there is to know, but as a scientist myself, I feel that there's a duty to just you need to investigate what it is you think you are seeing, and then try to have a logical explanation of what it truly is, because it's pretty easy to see something you don't know what it is and then leap to your own explanation of what it is versus going up to it, seeking it out, trying to figure out what it is. Um, and I wish more people would do that instead of just jump at the first thing that pops in your head, because there's always some logical explanation or earthly explanation for what it is that you're experiencing. And maybe it is weird, maybe it's something common and you just never saw it before. That's how my mind works. I don't go to the crazy stuff right off the bat, because that's just not how my mind works. So,
Very good.
and I'm not saying, because of the disclaimer, that I'm saying people are crazy. I'm just saying sometimes people go to they've heard of these orbs, and so their mind just goes there instead of just really seeking it out and going, it's just a stupid firefly, and I just happened to be at the right place at the right time and just far enough away where it looked creepy, but
I know I've talked to a lot of guests on the show, and it's, because you're out there looking for Bigfoot and you see these lights or these orbs or something, you automatically assume that it's related, and it absolutely could be, or it absolutely could be completely unrelated and just this other phenomenon or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, and I tend to go with tribal people have been here longer than we have. And if they don't talk about it as being something that's related, or even they've never even mentioned the concept of it, I don't see why, they're all of a sudden here. I mean, so, that doesn't seem very logical. It seems like whatever's been here has been here the entire time. And so, but of course, there are things that Native people talk about that I have no explanation for whatsoever, and so, could go both ways, but they don't talk about orbs. So for me, it's kind of a closed door.
Very good. So earlier you mentioned that they were talking about the creatures smacking the trees to make the wood knocks and stuff, and it's always been kind of debated whether it's a wood knock or a mouth noise or clapping and stuff. Have they actually seen them do this, or how do they explain that?
Actually, there's several tribes that have seen it and describe it, and they describe the Bigfoot as having a club, and that's what he uses, and it's not always a tree either. So one tribe in particular was pretty adamant that sometimes it's a tree, but it's also the ground, that he's striking the ground and making those kinds of noises. And so and it's never a good sound. I mean, they talk about it's a way of it's not meant for us. It's meant for the other Bigfoot. So it's a communication tool, quick, to not reveal yourself, but let your other Bigfoots in the area know that there's humans here. And so oftentimes, they don't specifically say it, but it's usually, if you hear that strike, it's, you basically go back where you came from, kind of thing. You just don't. It's what it is. Doesn't necessarily mean the Bigfoot meant to let you know that I'm in the area. It's not a territorial thing. It's more of, hey, Bigfoot John, there's a human here, just letting you know, so that you don't just pop out in the middle of somewhere and do something. And so, but it's also the whistling. The whistling is that is definitely never a good thing. And in that case, the Bigfoot is communicating on purpose to try to lure you out. And so it's kind of, they do one thing for themselves and another thing on purpose to try to trick humans into coming outside.
So basically all these, researchers and investigators that are going out doing wood knocks to get communication are basically warding off these creatures, because they're telling them, hey, we're out here, stay away.
Well, and our wood knocks are never that good. I mean, I've only ever heard we don't really do it all that often, because we've only ever really successfully done one that actually sounded any good. But we do have this little wood knocker type tool that makes a funny noise. But yeah, it's. I mean, I guess on occasion have had a good response before, but most of the wood knocks I have heard were totally. I wasn't doing anything. I was just sitting there being myself, and I had one time that it was the loudest thing I ever heard in my life, and I swore that Bigfoot just had to be right there. And I turned my head as quick as possible, and I'm looking through the things, and I said he has to be right there because it was just like right there. And in that case, the Bigfoots in Area X area, they don't like certain males, human males at all. They hate Daryl Collier. I'm just tell you flat out. You can ask anybody. Um, and they are, in particular, would have certain reactions to certain individuals. And so, one of our members who I was in Area X for in 2013, I went to Area X for 3 weeks while Bob stayed here at the house and took care of our kids. And so it was just me, and I was just, had to rely on who my teammates were. And they, in particular, disliked the team leader we had on that. I think it was the second week I was there. And every time he did anything, they were on him. Like they would, they just did not like him. And so that day when I was sitting on the porch, broad daylight, smack, just reverberated. My ears hurt, and I'm like, oh no, it's right over there. And just like, I'd say 5 minutes, maybe at the best, I could hear his car coming. And so it was clear to me that they were, and every time he went into town, they'd knock. Every time he came back, they'd knock. It was like they just really did not like him, and they were letting the other Bigfoots know, oh, that guy we hate's back, kind of thing. Never did it when I left or come back. They didn't care. What am I to them? I'm just this little tiny thing that they could hit with a rock and knock her out. So anyway, I always thought that was interesting. But that was, that's when we would knock. I don't know that we're conveying necessarily what we want to, versus when we use call blasts. I think that those have been fairly successful. We have one Bigfoot in Tuolumne County who always reacts to the Ohio howl. He just hates that thing, and he will holler back almost instantaneously. I mean, he hates that thing. And so, unfortunately, that area was burned in the rim fire in 2013. So it's been disrupted, but I think it'll come back to where we could elicit the same response. So,
as far as other vocals, you're talking about that. Do the native tribes have any thoughts or opinions on like the whoops? What are those conveying?
I've never had anybody ever bring that up with me. I have talked to several elders who were aware of the Sierra sounds, had heard them, and their reaction was quite entertaining in the sense of, if I had heard that, I would just left. I would just go away. Just that was, and I didn't really get them to tell me, is this something your tribe talks about? They were just like horrified by the whole thing. And so I don't know that was successful. I probably should not have brought that particular time that up, because it was uncomfortable for them, very much so. So I haven't had anybody tell me, outside of the whistling, they've not brought up other types of sounds that they think a Bigfoot makes outside of the wood knocking or that type of thing. Nothing like the gibberish or that stuff. And you have to kind of think about it. I mean, I don't even know how necessarily, unless you saw the Bigfoot making that noise, I don't know that I'm sure at some point over 10,000 years, a native person saw a Bigfoot making that noise or whatever it is, but I don't know. It may not have been important enough to pass on. I mean, the stories that we have, that most tribes they had a time of telling stories. So you didn't necessarily, let me go back. So stories are critical to tribal life, because that's how you pass on tribal knowledge. So you want to teach your kids, who will then teach your grandchildren, who will then teach your great grandchildren, this important knowledge that the tribe holds, because when I'm gone, I can't tell you if you have a headache, this is the plant you need to pick and grind and take. I have to teach you that as you grow, or else, because you have to do it more than one time. It isn't, I taught you 2 + 2 = 4 once, so that I don't have to teach you that again. No, it's just like how we learn now. We get told things multiple times. And then even then, sometimes not, we forget pieces of it because we're humans. That's the way it is. I often think about that kind of stuff, and like, who was the first person who ate this and decided this was good to eat versus this mushroom over here that made you crazy, but it's, you pass it along, that this is bad, this is good, and every time you see it, this is bad, this is good, and then you keep doing on. And most tribes talk about, there was those storytelling where you're teaching happened when you're back at the village. So it's usually winter storytelling. You don't not together as a group, in a large group anyway, usually in other time periods, because that's when you're getting your subsistence. Of course, it's different for everybody. In Pacific Northwest and Washington, when you had the salmon runs, of course, you had enough food for your 2 weeks. You had the whole year's worth of food, but you're still getting berries and other stuff. So these stories, when you talk about it, I know I hear a lot of skeptics talk about, well, they're just stories. Indians made stuff up and all this really derogatory type thing. And it's just like, you really think that these tribal people that have been here for 10,000 plus years made stuff up to entertain themselves? It's not a logical way of thinking about it. They wouldn't be here and have survived all that time without the knowledge of how to live on the land like they did successfully for that long of a period. It's when we came, we disrupted their ability to get to those resources, to farm the land, or subsist off the land. That's how that happened. And I think that's one of those European concepts is, well, when I saw an Indian, he looked like he couldn't survive without us, and blah, blah. Well, that's because you disrupted their normal lifestyle. And so when they tell stories, you also only have so much time to tell the story. And so I think certain things that didn't really matter, or maybe didn't get conveyed or got forgotten. So I'm sure Native people saw them. And that's, of course, making the assumption they're the ones that are making that noise. They didn't, in the Sierra Sounds, Ron didn't see them making that noise either. He just was deep in the wilderness. That sound's being made. They just had all this other stuff happen. And it's pretty creepy. And I don't know of any human that does that, and so we can infer that was a Bigfoot. But if Native Americans had experienced that, it's lost through time, I guess is the best way to put it. It wasn't something that was so critical that they repeated it time and time and time again, versus like whistling. That was life and death, kind of thing. I have to keep telling you this because cousin Ida got kidnapped, and now she's some kind of, bride of, Bigfoot John, and we don't want that to happen to you. So we're really emphasizing, when you hear this, do not do this. It's critical. Versus, I heard, Bigfoot John was over there doing some gibberish stuff, and I don't know what he said, and I don't really care because it didn't have anything to do with me. It might be that kind of situation where it just wasn't important enough, or it was conveyed and it's been forgotten in time. But I have never heard a tribal person, if they talk about they're talking about, this Bigfoot told me this, and it has always conveyed to me that it was with words. It was in their native language. So.
Have you ever had any stories about like the stick structures or anything of why those are made or what they mean?
I haven't, but natives do talk about, he lives in the forest at night, and they have mentioned that he makes beds. I haven't heard of anything like that there was a structure or anything about it. They never called them nests or anything like that. They just said he makes beds, and you knew when you saw one what it was, kind of thing. And it always usually had something to do with a bear, that you could tell the difference between a bear bed and a Bigfoot bed. And usually there was, they have this old saying, which I have come to enjoy and believe myself, that if you see one, there's more than one. They're rarely by themselves. And so usually if you saw the one, there's probably something right back there or over there kind of watching you as well. And so don't do stupid things. So, but yeah, nothing like stick structures that have come across to me as that's what they're describing, and sometimes that's a different thing too, because we use things like stick structures and to native person. I don't know that I don't know that would be to them what it is to us necessarily, but they don't talk about making like any kind of like other kind of symbols that mark a territory or anything like that. But they did, most of that was based on knowledge. Like several tribes told me that you had, when you went to pick berries, this was your berry patch, the human berry patch, and that over there is his. Don't take berries from that one. I'm pointing, like you can see me point. But I talk with my hands. But essentially, this was our resource, that's his resource. Don't take from his resource, because it will cause problems. And there's a lot of tribes that had those types of things, like, this is where he gets his fish, this is where we get our fish, this is where we do this, we do that. And we don't, it was like they come to a peace, this. And tribes do talk about that they, had treaties or agreements with the Bigfoots that lived in an area, and there were times where they had to purposely kill one because he wasn't behaving himself. He was taking children for food or doing something he should be doing. They'd say, hey, we've had enough of that. One of the very famous ones is Lovelock Cave in Nevada, where the Bigfoots were taking the children, so much so that they went up to him and they said, hey, you're going to have to knock this off because you're killing our children and we don't like it. And if you don't do it, we're going to kill you. And they did it again. And so they trapped him in that Lovelock Cave and set it on, put some brush against. And they even were so nice. They said, okay, one more warning. Really, if you promise not to eat our children, we'll let you out. And the Bigfoot said, no, we're going to continue to eat the children. So they set the brush on fire and killed all of them. And all of them. So that was, and there's several stories like that where the Washoe around Lake Tahoe area has a very similar story where they said, hey, we don't like you doing this, stop doing it. And the Bigfoot said no. And so they had a war. And the story goes, the tribe talks about it, we have bows and arrows. All you guys got is rocks and sticks. Who do you think's going to win that? And they won it. And the Washoe, so much so that they this is the most random thing that's ever happened to me. I was sitting in my at my desk in my office, and one of my Washoe elders called, and he goes, I just want to let you know, because it's time for me to tell you this, that you have 3 Bigfoot in your territory, and the one that lives over basically in Calaveras County is a jerk. And this is his name, and he's not a nice one. And I'm just letting you know. And I said, I said, but what about the ones in 12? And he goes, oh, no, they're great. And I went, okay. And then he just hung up. And I was like, I didn't write down the name she gave me because, I couldn't have spelled it even if I wanted to. That reminds me, I need to talk to him because he's retired now. And so I think I could probably get more information out of him. But it was just the most random thing that he just called me up and goes, you need to know this, and that one over there. And it's interesting because I've heard about this jerk in Calaveras County now several times, that they even have it. He has his own name because he's just a mean Bigfoot, and basically they don't like him and they try to stay away from him. And so anyway, I always just thought that was pretty funny that I don't know how I got on this subject, but anyway, it was in regards to beds, I guess. But no, they don't talk about anything. It's if it and maybe it's not my time to learn it. I mean, that's also a fair statement too. Maybe all this time they know they talk gibberish or whatever you want to call that language, but it's not. I don't get. I haven't earned it yet to get that kind of information. So I think technically this year I'm officially the age of an elder. So maybe.
Well, good luck to you.
I don't know if I want to know.
Yeah. So to maybe change topics and maybe not, I'm not sure, but I've heard stories up in our area, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan area, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've heard, and I want to see if you've heard anything similar or if this is something totally different. So up by us, we have what is known as the red-haired giants.
Mm-hmm.
And these are like the miners. They were supposed to like mine copper and ore and stuff out of the land, and they're supposed to have a double row of teeth. So they have two sets of teeth instead of just the one, which is what I've heard. And they had 6 fingers, according to legend and stuff. And the red-haired giants went to war with some of the native tribes around here, and the native tribes ended up killing them all off. So have you heard any of these stories? Does that match anything you've heard? And do you think that those are the same as these Bigfoot creatures?
I have heard that story. I did not hear that they had double row of teeth or 6 fingers. It was just the red-haired giants that went to war and that they got all killed off. And the I don't know why an animal would have 2 rows of teeth. I mean, that kind of, I don't know. They make you pretty efficient, I guess. If but they tear into flesh like it's no business. But and this is not Shark Week, so just want to put that out.
Sorry,
that's okay. But no, I hadn't heard those particular details. But that, different, storytellers might have different details. So I don't doubt it. But I always understood those to be Bigfoot. That was
okay.
That's my understanding is that is a Bigfoot.
So do you have any stories? Like I said, like these things were supposed to be mining copper, in our area and stuff. So do you know of any of I mean, they have mines that they found where these things were supposedly that these mines were made and worked by the red-haired giants. And I mean, this is all local, like up here and stuff. We have like books on it of our area and that. So I don't know.
Well, it's very interesting in the sense because I don't know what they would be using copper for. And so Bigfoot is an animal, and like all animals, you seek out what you need to survive. And I can't, unless it was like something like a salt mine, I think they wouldn't have any use for minerals because that's a very human concept of something valuable to us. Why would copper be valuable to, and you can't eat it? It doesn't provide any nutrients, and unless it's in a different format. But most tribes that I have talked to, if a Bigfoot had a human product, it was because they got it through trading with Native Americans. And so Bigfoot is pretty universal, a very good hunter. And it was not unusual for Bigfoot to bring to a tribe a deer. And in exchange for that, you gave them something like a basket, or you gave them they could not process. This is actually a really good story. That the tribe in the Tule Indian Reservation tribe, they had a story that you never ever turned your back when. So a very staple food here in California is acorns, and you have to pound it up and then leach it to get the bitterness out of it. And then once you do that, it's got all kinds of nutrition in it. It's just a really heavy in proteins and just a valuable food resource. And they would always said, never have your back while you're milling to giant sequoia groves, because giant sequoias, which are like big redwoods, that's Bigfoot's territory. And he would hear you pounding the acorn, and then he'll wait until you're leaching and then he'll still it because he loves it. So that was also a common thing that was traded, were these, because he can't process it. He doesn't know how to pound it and then leach it, and for how long to leach it. And so that was something they would trade for a lot, as well as pine nuts that were available, because he didn't know which ones were good to eat, not to eat, and how to get it out of the shell. Wasn't as dexterous. Couldn't put his fingers together to get the nut out. And so that was what they would say, is that if he had this, usually it was because of trade, but occasionally he would steal things because he thought it was cute and shiny and stuff. But usually it was a gift, that I'm going to, in exchange for this, I'm going to give you this and you're going to give me that. And so unless the Bigfoots were doing that for humans, where they were milling the copper and using it to exchange to the local tribe, that's the only way I would see that working, is that they were doing it on the behalf of humans to get something out of the humans. And I have not heard that as being that the tribes were trading for that. So I don't know. That's the only way I can figure that he would do. But they'd probably be pretty good. I've often hoped we could figure this out so that we can, get some of those and put them on the front line for Dallas Cowboys, and maybe they can win a game once in a while.
Very good, very good. Yeah, and you could be right with that line of thinking and stuff, because I think here in Wisconsin we had supposedly there's stories of these giant skeletons that were buried with the natives down by the Madison area and stuff. And if they were trading or something with those people, that could be why they were doing it. So.
Yeah, and there are stories like I can't remember the name of the tribe right this minute, but when they were being moved along the Trail of Tears to their current location, the tribe talked about the Bigfoot followed them, and the tribe kept telling them, "No, you don't want to come with us." And they said, "We can't live without you. You're ours, and we're yours." They're a very close relationship. And they said, "Okay, fine, but you can't camp near us. You have to camp away so that the white people can't see you." And so they talked about being able to see their fires just outside, so they knew that they were still there and still going to follow them. But that's how they came to that location, was that they walked with them from their original lands. And so I can't remember the name of the tribe that talked about that, but anyway, so that's it's always possible. I mean, the Yokit or the Tule Indian, an elder soul can't go on to heaven unless Bigfoot comes and takes that soul there. So he's critical to their survival, and they have a song that talks about that only a woman can sing. But he's critical to them. So I can see very much that, like I said in the beginning, some tribes he's awful. That's giants, cannibals, and monsters. That's where I got that title. Was to some he's just a friendly giant, to others he's a cannibal that eats our kids, and then he's a monster to others. So I think those relationships are based on personalities, just like we have personalities. I think my cat has more personality than some humans I've met lately. So it's very possible that some Bigfoot groups would be dependent or have a very happy existence with their local tribe, versus I think in other locations you just had some bad behaving Bigfoots that were in conflict with the tribes. And so but I would think for your story, if those red-haired giants were providing the tribe with something, then why would you go to war with them? So usually you don't go to war with a friend. And that comes across to me as you're an enemy, and we want you gone out of this territory. And much so that they didn't just kill one; they killed them all.
And I do believe that goes back to your story of the stealing the children and the women, is why that they said that they went to war with the red-haired giants. So.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. Well, of course, there's nobody. If they had lost the war, I don't know if that story, that would make it this far. Because you don't usually
Mhm.
tell stories of your defeat. So we only get the wins. We wiped them all out, not just the one. So
History is always told by the winners.
yeah, ridden by the
Uh,
lion, not the lamb. Mhm.
we're coming up on the end of the hour here, and I have two more questions for you, really quick. Have you heard anything about you? You kind of mentioned there of them using fire. Has that come across a lot? Because I heard when, like, I think you kind of touched on that too, is when the white man came, the tribes and stuff told them to stop using fire because that's how they can find you.
The tribes do talk about their ability to use fire. Yeah, um, they're. I'm trying to think of this one that I can't remember quite the whole story, but yeah, that they cook their food, that they eat. They don't eat raw meat. But that's not universal. That's isolated to just a few tribes. But yeah, that's they do talk about him being able to use fire.
Very
Now it always comes across use fire. I've never asked, do they make fire? Use fire, something else is going on and you're just carrying it around with you. Versus, I assume that they assumed that he could make fire, not just use it. But yeah, fires.
Well, I have heard like the tribes and stuff used to carry fire with them, like from whenever they were on the move and stuff. They could carry like burning embers and stuff because it
Yes.
was hard to restart it. So
Well, I mean, all tribes have a way of making fire, and I've tried to do the local, and it's just easier to carry some moss. Yeah, they have a pouch that was known as the fire, where they would keep, an ember or a coal, and that would just help it go faster. But yeah, they have multiple ways of making fire
awesome.
themselves, humans.
Right. Mhm. And you mentioned like there was a song about that women could only sing about, the
Mhm.
Bigfoot stuff. Is there anywhere online or websites or CDs or anything that you can go to find these songs, these tribal songs, and more information on this?
No, I recorded it, and I was given permission to record it. And if you ever, I actually have several recordings, and I'm the only person who has it because I got permission to do it. And I do, when I give talks, it's one of the songs that I do play because it's such a beautiful songs, and it's really funny because probably one of the most powerful things that ever. I've had a lot of powerful things, but one day, so it's belongs to the yoke. It's Tule River song. And one day I was at this place we call Wakaloo Hepio, and it's a campground, but it's built around a village. So there's a Native American village there, and we have the important parts all fenced off from the public, and the public doesn't want to have anything to do with it because it's also kind of creepy looking because we haven't cleared out the brush or anything in there, so it's hard to walk in. And one of my very special elders named Arveda had a Bigfoot experience. I don't know, like at that time, probably would have been 20 years from that time period, and it's probably been another 10 years since then. So, 30 years in the past. And I was there, and I had just walked up to her, and she closed her eyes and she sang that song. And I was just like, whoa, why did you do that? Kind of thing. Because I recognized it. I can sing it. I mean, I've heard that. I played it enough. I can sing it. And she just looked up and she looked at me. She goes, I don't know. I just felt like you needed that. And it just came to me. And I just went, I don't know. And it was so powerful. I wanted to cry because it was just like, and I don't remember now why I needed it, but I did need something at that moment. I don't recall now what the issue was, but I was something sad had happened to me, and I was just like in a bummer place, and it just filled me with, I don't know, just filled me with God telling me you're on a good path. Don't let stuff bother you. And it probably was something to do with Bigfoot that somebody had, you know, read me the riot act or wasn't nice to me or something somewhere in the cyber world of real human beings that can talk bad to each other and not feel bad about it. Something to that effect. I don't remember, but I just always just thought that was it. That she thought she had never heard the song before. She said it came to her and overwhelmed her. And since it's a Bigfoot song, well, of course we're still here, so it wasn't meant to take us anywhere. But I think it was just a way of communicating to me that it's okay, And maybe Bigfoot's the one who sent it. I don't know. But I just remember when I got home, I told Bob that, and his whole face went, oh my God, kind of thing. Because there's no reason for her to have known that song because she's not Yokich. She's Miwok. So
That's really cool.
Good old creepy story to send me on.
Awesome. Again, I appreciate your stories and all your hard work and everything that you're doing out there. I think it's amazing that you're actively trying to keep these stories alive and to share them and treat them with respect that they need. And
yeah. And it's important because COVID was really, 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 really hard on tribal elders across the states. And so, people, and I don't need to tell that to tribal people. They know how important their elders are, but it's sad and heartbreaking at the same time because I wish I had done more and with the time I had with them. But I learned other things too. I didn't just learn. We didn't always talk about Bigfoot. Part of my job was to listen to them about all kinds of things. And so I know more about what plants not to eat and to eat, and tasted more things that I would never, ever tried to eat before. But I got that knowledge now. So.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate all your work, and I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done.
Well, thank you for having me on. I enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Can you real quick just tell everybody where they can find the North American Wood Ape Conservancy and the stuff that you've done there, because we barely touched on that, and anything else, any other websites that you have or work that you've done?
Sure. We're at woodape.org, and so you can visit. There's all kinds of neat sounds, lots of, if you want to know more about my experiences, they have the I call it Oichita. I forgot the name of it, but it's a very large, free to download paper on experiences our teams have had. It's Wachita's the real name, but there's also the Tag 7 paper on there if you want to learn more about that. If you want to pick up my book, it's available through Hancock House. It's out of print, so this is a second print, and it's not quite as pretty as the first one, but it is what it is. And other than that, if you ever want to get a hold of me, you can find me on Facebook. I don't have my own website or anything like that because I just don't have the time to do any of that stuff anymore. They tell you you're supposed to have lots of time the older you get, but it just seems like I get more and more busy with things that I need to do than when I was, 14. So like I had a lot of free time when I was 14. I have no free time now. So.
Awesome. Do you have any conventions coming up here after August that you're going to be speaking at or anything else?
I know my next one is at the end of August. So, and it's pretty local to Tuolumne County. So. So I don't have anything else on the books, mostly because I'm busy filming. I'm on a show called The Proof is Out There. It's on Friday nights on the History Channel at 7 o'clock Pacific. So that would make it 10 o'clock Eastern time. Anyway, I have 2 more filming sessions I need to do with them. And so that's kind of takes up most of my time lately. So we're filming for the 4th season now. So, and Cliff Barackman is on it as well. Meldrum makes an appearance once in a while. There's a lot of good people on there and I really, really enjoy the show because they let me say whatever. They don't have that disclaimer that says whatever Kathy says, it doesn't belong to us because I'm usually, how do I put this? I'm usually the reasonable debunker, I guess. And I get a variety of different stuff. It's really kind of fun. The only ones I told them they had to stop giving me creepy clown stuff because I don't care for that. And I think they took me a little bit too seriously when I said, I don't want any more UFOs. Don't give me that stuff. But I get a variety, so it's a lot of fun.
Very good. Awesome. Definitely check that out as well. All right. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, I'm good.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the show today.
All right, thank you.
All right, guys, that is our show for this week. Happy Labor Day. And again, unfortunately, today's episode was pre-recorded, but if you have anything, shoot Kathy a message or leave it in the comments here, and we can check that out check back at that and see what we got later. But until next time, guys, I would tell you who's going to be on the next show, but I actually don't have any scheduled for the next show at this time. So it'll be a surprise for both of us. So until then, I'll see you on the edge.